Good morning, Trumptopia. Have you watched The Midnight Gospel yet? Because seriously, if you can, log into a Netflix account without violating anybody's trust, which is... or breaking any local laws, etc., etc. And watch yourself all 8 episodes of that show. Like, stop listening to my podcast and go watch that show. Come back. That's right, folks. It is Sunday, May 24th. It's 12:23 p.m. on Pacific Standard Time. I was staring at the clock as it was becoming 12:12, and I was like, shoulda, coulda, woulda already been on the air. I have too many moments like that because I have been so enthusiastically creating this haphazard podcast thing as a hobby for 3.5, almost 4 years. There are increasingly, many of those kinds of moments where I'm like, damn, I just muttered that out loud to myself and it was kind of spot on. And I wish that had been in the middle of me recording an episode, or that I had magically just turned on the magic box that lets me do this, instead of, staring at the pantry or the shower or whatever it is. It's a bizarre thing the way the human mind works, is it not? I'm sure many people, long before this unusual turn of events, I think most human beings, bless their hearts, have enough experiences in their life to pause and sort of question. And if they don't, bless their hearts, they are overdue. And by that I mean, take the opportunity to see what is there to be found. Because, human nature, no matter what false things are attributed to human nature, yes, that's better, that's more accurate. The editor in me must edit. Setting aside all the horrific things that are usually commonly attributed to human nature, just neglect those for a hot minute. Just really seriously pretend they don't exist. Think about the untold array of things that can, could, should, would, might very well actually be part of human nature that we are either blissfully unaware of, regretfully and neglectfully ignorant of, etc., etc. Welcome to this moment in time, folks. The past, the present, the here and the now, the yin and the yang that is Sunday, May 24th at 12:26 p.m. in the middle of what would normally be, especially, like in terms of media and how we celebrate things in the world, and this is supposed to be kind of like a radio show. It doesn't make the noise. Right, never mind. What was I saying? Radio show, right? This is one of those things where, I should insert a little note for future reference while editing and proof audio. Like, what I did was I reached for my swivel lamp, which is like very similar to the kind of spring-loaded arm you might have a microphone on. In fact, I could indeed repurpose it if I really wanted to. I'm clever like that with tools and stuff. I'm not going to right now because I don't have a microphone. Don't need it. But if I did, if I ever wanted to, I wanted it to make the springy, like, that's my, it's a lived in, here we are in the studio, and that's going to make a squeaky noise. But most people would be happy to have a spring-loaded, one of those arm things that squeaks zero, like doesn't make a noise, right? And I'm here complaining that I wish it made the springy. Now I'm going to have to go look for that if I want to make an effect later on when I animate this. But I digress. Reeling it back. Literally living through history. Dun dun dun. Insert epic organ, pipe organ music here. Historical. Go ahead, imagine it in your mind. It's not there yet. Just but pretend. That's what makes it fun. You just use your imagination. Dun 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 in an epic, echoey, beautiful, chamber of some evil villain playing organ music on a giant steam-driven pipe organ kind of thing. Why I had to make it villainous, I don't know. I'm not a villain, right? I'm just an internet radio disc jockey. Great. People send me videos that I do not have time to watch on Facebook, and I kind of regret looking at that. I wish I hadn't even opened that, but I did, and I guess we'll come around full circle to it and check it out at some point, because now I made a fool of myself. Talk about it live on my radio show while it's recording live, semi-live. No one's listening now, I don't think. No one's in the chat room. There literally is a broken heart icon floating above the quote, "There are no messages yet. Be the first to say something." No, I don't want to. I can't just sit there and chat while I'm talking or talk while I'm chatting. It's one or the other with those kinds of activities. And there's also invite Facebook friends button, which I've never clicked on. Not in the middle of trying to record a podcast show. I usually have it on the effects tab. So, oh yeah, right. Welcome to the show, and what show is it? It's Good Morning Trumptopia. I'm your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Trumptopia! I totally screwed that up. I forgot that the volume was down, and I pushed play, and I was like, why isn't it playing? Hold on a second. Can I reload it? No. It's just going to play from where it is stuck. We're just stuck listening to it from here.
A special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's talk Trump.
What the actual fuck is he doing? And don't anybody in any church fall for the gambit that he's fighting for you now, pretending that he's going to force, through government overreach, the hand of governors, when really it's the communities themselves that have the free will to choose what they do and do not comply with these guidelines. None of these are like, capital offenses of any kind, I don't think. Although some places, I do agree, a little gnarly in their strictness in some of the things that they've instituted. Hopefully, I think, if I'm not mistaken, still all technically on a temporary basis, and to eventually be rescinded, right? Let us hope that we live in a reality where we are on the brink of some thoughtful breakthroughs and some well thought out collaborative civic organizational restructuring about how we do stuff and how we manage paying people things for doing stuff instead of a big clusterfuck of like empire implosion. Like, is is the United Empire of the United States of America. Is the empire... How would you put empire in the word? In that... The United States of America empire goes at the end, right? That's the word it belongs, I think. In terms of being grammatically correct. I don't know. It's unknown. No one's quite started using it yet. Although, I wouldn't be the first to have uttered those words, I don't think. There's been plenty of moments in history worth protest, right? Of the choices made. And where the bloody fuck are we now? And what's it going to be like 60 years from now? Is anybody worried about that? Anybody thinking about that? Or however many, 100 years from now? Because it's 19... what did I title this? Is somewhere in there I think I wrote about, is it a fair comparison to say that 2020 is this living generation's 1918 Spanish superflu pandemic? As there was, plenty of chit-chat and discussion and argument about what the bloody hell was going on and why back in those days, there is now, and there's plenty of chaos and confusion and disagreement and dissent. And as I was talking about day before yesterday, lots of name calling and judgment and anger and hatred and lots of, obvious harvesting of those negative energies for the purposes of getting people to split down ridiculous. Trying to make up a new word there. Still not. I think I should just stick with redonkulous. But I'm trying to diminutize it even more. What the hell am I rambling about? This world is living through an interesting moment in history. And I humbly submit to you that perhaps... one of my favorite questions to pivot here. We're going to pivot right here. One of my favorite questions being asked everywhere you look, no matter what platform, is, this question of establishing the quote-unquote new normal. And I don't know if I'm the only person. I doubt that I am. I'm sure there are others out there going, whoa, understand your impulse, but slow your roll, human species. That last several sets of normal, quote-unquote, were, for anybody who wasn't aware of the fact at the time, for whatever reason, you're too young, you're too old, you missed it, you were too busy doing insert something here. All of those last 300 years, 500 years, we can even go back 1,000 years, whatever. The way we run things is still toxic AF. Don't go back to that. Don't go back to that as, some goal in response to this new normal that is being experimented or experimentally explored as we cope with highly infectious disease. Because, and what do I mean toxic as fuck? Germaphobes had something to say long ago, and everybody just laughs in their faces. But looks like of all the people that could claim to be the tinfoil hat wearers that really got it right, it's them. It's yeah, you guys, vectors for disease. Everything is gross. You touch too much stuff. You sneeze on your hands. You lick yourself. You do all kinds of gross things, and then you shake hands with each other and hug. It's gross. You sneeze. You stand around, and you share cigarettes. All these gross things. All these vectors for disease go in, and pack into a small aluminum tube. Maximum number for the balance of safety and profit. And travel the world without any kind of intelligible testing system that actually can identify and screen people successfully in any meaningful way. and keep up, that level of foot traffic. And what do you expect? Anybody that's ever watched more than one movie about, some horrific, horrible, scary end of the world, or read a little bit about medicine, and I think the fun, interesting, frightening thing there's all this talk about, like, what is COVID-19 really showing us? Presuming it's real, right? Like, there's still, that division is there. People are arguing. I literally, I shit you not, if I've already talked about this live on the air, I apologize. And this is not shit talk. This just happened. I have no judgment towards this person. But this is like a week ago, I had to go into the store, to my local, one of my, local grocery stores for some essential item, survival-based shopping. And I was in full compliance, to the best of my understanding of the local, suggested guidelines of, like, what to be doing when out and about conducting, basic getting by survival stuff, right? Going to the grocery store. And by the way, I am a little bit, I feel like I'm going to be accused of just copying this, but I'm not. Like, I feel I've always felt this way. In terms of issues like this, I feel like there's a range of possible ways to look at this, and obviously some extremes are being pointed out. And to the best of my ability, I'm trying to figure out, like, where those extremes all coordinate and what the middle path in relationship to those extremes might possibly be. And that, I don't know, I could be wrong, but either way, whether I'm wrong or I'm right, it requires me to state things or opinions that are more nuanced than yes or no about any particular issue. Curiously, always starting with the question, instead of arguing, why aren't we figuring out where all this divisive media that is driving this conflict is coming from? Because this feels a little bit like a set-up line of perpetual debate to me. Whenever you get any kind of dichotomous, like, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, and you can manipulate people to argue and get caught up. And I've seen examples of social media, like, I don't know, programming content, I guess, for lack of a better term. Content that is meant to, as memes do, regardless of whether I make them or anybody else makes them, or they're made for nefarious reasons or for, uplifting good reasons. That they encodify a sort of establishment and entrenchment set of, like, paradigm setups. And, in other words, not this time last year, there was no such thing as masker, anti-masker. If you'd written that into a sci-fi show and made a big heavy arc in a series about the politicization, the polarization and politicization, the making political of this debate of whether or to wear a mask or not to wear a mask is this current historical moment's to be or not to be. Apparently, because there's people fighting about it purely in the theoretical, as well as out there on the streets. There's people flinging dirty masks on the floor like used condoms, which was always gross. Like, what the fuck, humanity? And there's people complaining about and not being willing to or wanting to pick up those used masks. And there's also the people going, look at you fools arguing about masks. They don't work because COVID is fake, or because COVID is nanobot technology, because COVID is real and it's, more deadly than paper masks or, fabric face shields. And that you need to be in a fucking, sealed in, oxygenated, HEPA level, end of the world 19 filter, made up number. I'm not exposing any conspiratorial information. I just made up that number. There's no such thing. But you know what I'm saying? Are you getting my drift, humanity? Like, whoa, slow your roll. Like, we can live in a society where people can have the freedom to choose. Is that horrible? Is that wishy-washy? Is that too on the fence of me? Let me give some context, because I haven't actually talked about, I don't think I've talked about it from this angle, about what I think is going on with COVID-19. For me personally, I think after just non-judgmentally trying to absorb as much of the overwhelming spectrum of information available about COVID-19, both in the realm of supposed fact and also stuff that's shoved over in the category of questionable facts, because they are indeed either self-declared or labeled as conspiracy theory content. And me, rolling the dice and taking the chance and going with the flow with a baseline Occam's razor sort of delineation that odds are it's entirely more likely, more believable to me that this pandemic is the expression of an actual naturally arrived at evolutionary, progression of a family of, infectious disease bearing agents, or whatever you call them, microbes that are evolving, and that we humans foolishly, overemphasize all the silliest things and don't focus on most of the right things, et cetera, and are stumbling our way through with incompetence and hubris and why does my brain want to say force majeure? Does that make sense there? Apparently. I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to look it up to make doubly sure. I don't want to sound like an idiot, but whatever. Of this, this through line that we're living through, we're apparently willing to take a big crapshoot risk on, from my perspective, and this is my humble opinion, because like I said, if you line out some fundamental assumptions, operational assumptions that I'm making, COVID-19 is some novel, organically arrived at through evolution, new vector for disease that's, a little bit more complex than we at first blush described it to ourselves. And that humanity has done what humanity does, which is turn it into political suicide football of, who's going to screw this up the hardest like we want. It feels as though the script for this epoch is politics, as we know it, as we defined it, buckles under its own weight of silly, absurdist, extremism thinking that is reined in by money. And that we're no more suffering under a sophisticated and well executed nefarious plan to butcher us all, because who would they profiteer on if they butchered us all, right? We haven't fixed any problems. And this disease, if it were on purpose, doesn't fix any problems either, does it? Not the way that it's unfolding, not the way that it's rolling out and kind of scary, easy to get. It seems to be unfolding the way an actual disease would be unfolding. I don't know, I could be wrong. I'm not actually a doctor. And if there are indeed doctors being held, silenced about this being technologically, I don't know. There's so many different, and I don't want to get into a discussion or debate right now, right at this moment, about how many different competing conspiracy theories there are about what COVID-19, quote unquote, really is. All of which claiming to be the absolute truth, none of which agree with each other, therefore canceling each other out as possible contenders for the absolute truth. Because, they all exclude each other and claim absolute truthiness. And none of them make actual sense when you really try to hone in on it and look and take reality for what reality actually is, to the best of your ability to discern. Now, for anybody who wants to argue about it, sure, there's sources that can support up almost, I've seen 40 different things, right? It's a punishment for God for this, that, or the other. That's a whole network of at least 12 different. It's an interesting number I landed on. Just a ballpark figure guesstimate how many different excuses that God is punishing us. And conversely, that some select group of people are going to be protected benevolently from it. But that's yet to be seen, right? And what we have seen is me spill my tea all over my face for want of that last gulp without wanting to manage the tea bags better. Presuming all that, and that I'm not crazy wrong to make that assumption, that this thing seems to be behaving not like nanobots driven by some executive order delivered through 5G networks, but like an actual disease that is communicable. And for whatever reason it took for society, it is taking humanity and society and the institutions that do stuff institutionally forever to acknowledge that, the most alarming sort of novel nouveau thing about it is that you can be penetrated by it and be a asymptomatic carrier and shedder and spreader of it, which makes, foolhardy and risky behavior of like aggregate interactions and commingling of people kind of dangerous if it's really going to ramp up and get like deadly and prove that it can kill a stronger majority of people than it has infected so far. Here's the only reason, and I don't want to fearmonger in any direction, right? Like I'm just pointing things out that I think are actual and real, instead of engaging in the debate of all the various flights of fancy, because they all sort of debunk themselves. In as much as that, like, it doesn't seem to be behaving like any of those things would. I could be wrong about that, right? But from my perspective, from what I can see, it doesn't seem to be. My concern that very much like the 2020, that history might be repeating itself, right? And that, well, gosh darn it, when you go and read a few things about what the 1918 flu, not 1917, the 1918 super flu was like, it was, some sort of mutant strain of the flu, which was gnarlier than previously we were accustomed to. And people sort of were lied to or chose to turn a blind eye to it in terms of taking precautions and or took precautions, and et cetera, et cetera. And while everywhere you go and every article you read about it says that there's no real direct correlation, my biggest conclusion I draw, not from any one given article about that particular pandemic or any other disease event in recorded human history, which there's always that like simmering off from left or right field debate of like how real is that normative historical record of it, and how much is being left out, how much is not reported here, blah 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 blah. Nature, and it's almost, I hate it, I feel it almost sounds cliche, although I don't know that it actually would be, or technically is, but like nature should not be underestimated. To me, that's like, duh. Don't underestimate nature, folks. Right? Barring the extremely wild and unusual, low probability event that it turns out to have been some sort of man-made, man-controlled design or disease that could have never evolved in nature on its own, then, wow, brace yourself, because something is going to come out of nature and is going to challenge us, because life consumes life, and that's what the experiment chamber that is this womb to all things that exist and are alive does. It just keeps cranking out an infinite array of forms, right? And they interact with each other in an infinite array of ways. I digress. I don't know anything. I don't pretend to be a doctor. I just wax and opine my opinion. We are positioned here to sort of find out for ourselves, probably in very real and gripping the side of your armchair kind of numbers, by say this time next year, whether bullying ourselves into just going back to something like a normal that was normality in the 2017 to 2019 chapter of what we do, how we do things, without paying some painful cost in terms of endangering ourselves and each other with a disease that we don't know enough about yet to really claim to have a working relationship with. Notice I'm not saying words like eradicated, destroyed, crushed, because I don't think that's how any of it works. As many people on whatever side of the argument they might perceive themselves to be have pointed out, the plain old regular flu still kind of gets quite a few people and bumps them off every year, and we've had a vaccine for it forever, and we are where we're at with it, right? There isn't 100% eradication. I don't know that even with our medical innovations, we get to a place where it's 100% anything about things we call disease. Because ultimately, what are they besides little building blocks of life doing what life does, which is consume other life in order to perpetuate itself? And it's our hubris and to our detriment for us to ignore, neglect, misunderstand forcibly, or in any way, shape, or form abuse that relationship. And guess what we've been doing for thousands of years?
Good morning, Trumptopia.
Sorry, I started playing the outro when I really should have been playing the
That
intro.
is
I mean, you
the
know,
latest
vice
madness.
versa.
From behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Stay woke, Trumptopia. Stay
Go watch
woke.
Midnight Gospel. Like, for reals. I need feedback. I need to hear people's opinions on that. Because I need to have a deep... That kind of show, for whatever reason, I think is worthy of forever being recognized and part of social discourse. I humbly submit to y'all for your consideration.